Pat Bev weighing in on an ongoing debate comparing James Harden and Dwyane Wade's careers. Well, Wade heard the chatter about the comparisons, and he hopped on his own podcast to give his 2 cents. Take a listen.
We're talking about an access key. When I look at the game, I look at who has an access key to get to the 30th floor. Okay? So the 30th floor access key in winning, I can't go to 30. Bill Russell's up there. Jordan up there. Like I may be on floor 25, but I ain't at floor 30. That doesn't mean anything to me. It just means that I don't have access to go to that floor. So if you have not won a ring, it doesn't mean you're not colder than somebody who won a ring. You just don't have access to go to the ring floors.
All right, Stephen A., what should hold more weight, MVPs or titles? Hey, Wendy.
It depends on who you are as a player and what level of a focal point were you. There's plenty of people that played with Michael Jordan, that played with Kobe and Shaq and with Bill Russell and with Kareem and with Magic, who are not on the level of some of the superstars that existed in the game. But for the purposes of this discussion, as it pertains to James Harden, fellas, against Dwyane Wade, there's no question that the rings matter. Why? Because James Harden, as great as he is, and I applaud the year that he's having and the performance that he has put forth since he's been in the Clippers uniform, in recognizing him as one of the greatest scoring sensations that this game has ever seen, particularly with his play while he was in Houston all of those years, D. Wade is next level. And I'm going to say this on national television to D. Wade, my brother. I'm getting sick and tired of you diminishing who the hell you are. You ain't no 25th floor. You the 30th floor. That's a 3-time champion there we're talking about with Dwyane Wade. That's a guy that recruited LeBron James. That's a guy that sacrificed a lot of his game to facilitate LeBron James being who he is, because LeBron James was great and greater than D. Wade, and D. Wade would be the first to admit that. But LeBron hadn't tapped into his pure greatness until he paired with Dwyane Wade. So Dwyane Wade, arguably the 3rd greatest off guard in the history of basketball behind MJ and that conversation. His selflessness, his leadership, his commitment to winning, his willingness to sacrifice so wins could take place, and everything that came with it, all contributes to winning. Shannon is a 3-time Super Bowl champion and a Hall of Famer. And no matter how critical Shay is about a player's individual performance from time to time, you never hesitate to preach team. You never hesitate to preach priority and leadership and the impact that can have. Wendy, you've been covering this league exceptionally well for years. What do you lament? Not only the absence of storytelling, but because of the stories that are worth telling about what it takes to win and the leadership that comes with it. That's Dwyane Wade. Dwyane Wade has been a man amongst boys on many, many occasions in his career, and he has been a glue piece. He's elevated the profile of Pat Riley, who was a winner as a coach and as an executive and as a player. He elevated that man. He elevated Miami. He elevated LeBron James. D. Wade belongs on that 30th floor. Stop saying it's less than that. I don't care that Bill Russell has 11 rings. D. Wade.
With the Warriors, where his greatness when he was at his absolute peak was pushed down by the Warriors. Now, he had his failures in the postseason. He also had some terrible luck in the postseason. If Chris Paul doesn't pull his hamstring, that team could have been in the fight. He could have had a ring. And this is what happens when you get into a situation like with Charles Barkley or Karl Malone. When you compare them, they go up against an all-time great, and all of a sudden people use it to diminish them. So I want to, before I talk about Dwyane Wade, acknowledge I think James Harden is brilliant and underrated. I had the opportunity to cover Dwyane Wade for those 4 years in Miami when LeBron was there. He is one of the most enjoyable players I've ever covered. And even though he was already an NBA champion and a Finals MVP when I first moved to Miami and covered him day to day, I couldn't believe watching him night in and night out how amazing of a player he was. Even though I was in the league, covering the league, everything like that, I didn't appreciate how awesome he was seeing him every day and the top of his game that he was at that time. I also want to point something out, that if you're talking about these two guys, Dwyane Wade was an elite defensive player. He is arguably the greatest shot blocking guard of all time. And also not a guard who's 6'8", a guard who's, I don't know what they measured him at, but he's 6'2", 6'3".
6'4".
Absolutely brilliant defensive player who could do a lot of different things. And look, at the end of the day, if you're getting down to this, yes, of course what you do in the championship category matters more than what you do in the regular season. I don't care what you do, how many regular season MVPs you have, a finals MVP. And if you can ask the guys who don't have a finals MVP, who had regular season MVPs, like Steph Curry, if you remember his face in 2022 there in Boston when he's holding the Bill Russell Trophy and what that meant to him, yes, it means more. It doesn't diminish the MVP. It doesn't diminish that James Harden's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer. But this is not really an honest discussion, with all due respect to Pat Bev.
Because I think the thing is, Stephen A. and Wendy, I like to compare guys that played the same position. James is a point. James isn't a two guard. James only played two guard when he was at OKC and Russ had the ball. From the time he went to Houston, to when he went to Brooklyn, to when he went to Philly, and now he's in LA, he's a point guard, Stephen A. And I think the thing that we're missing, he's one of the damn very best point guards to have ever played. But I would give the nod to D Wade, because here's the thing, Stephen A. When you get that finals MVP, you get a 2-for-1. That means you won a title and you got the finals MVP. Now, okay, James Harden has a regular season MVP. D Wade has a finals MVP. Now you go, okay, all-star game selection, 13-11. And you're absolutely right. Both of you guys make very compelling points. D Wade was the guy. D Wade said, you know what? In order for us to get more championships, I need to let LeBron, because he's the best player, and I don't need to tussle with him because this is Wade County. In order for us to succeed, I need to make sure he understands I'm okay with you being driving, and I'll ride shotgun. And so for me, I'm going to take a slight nod. Man, that for a 5 or 6 year span, when he first got to Houston, wasn't nobody really seeing James Harden on the offensive end. Now, he's never been much of a defender. He's going to ole you, and, you're like, come on, James. Basically, he was doing what Luka is doing on the defensive end before Luka was doing it. But his offensive prowess, he was as good as we've seen in a very, very long time. But I'm going to give a slight nod to D Wade, because I saw him before, and I saw him win that championship being down. And even though Shaq was on the team, it wasn't Shaq from L.A., and he took that series over. So I'm going to give a slight nod. So if it's a vote, Stephen A., it's a split decision, but I'm going D Wade.
Well, we're going D Wade as well because of his playoff performances again, compared to James Harden. And we know that James Harden ran into some bad luck, but he also brought his own bad luck on a couple of occasions. And people are not going to let that slide. But we do have an elevated level of appreciation for James Harden, and we should, based on what we're seeing from him in a Clippers uniform, because he truly is a point guard. Now, when you say he was a point guard in Houston, Shannon, that really wasn't the case. Yeah, the ball was in his hands, but this brother was leading the league in scoring, and he had the ball in his hands, and he was looking for his shot. Now, he does have 2 assist titles on his resume. D Wade doesn't have that, but he was still a scorer. That's how you looked at him. And so I look at it from that standpoint, combined with what he did in the postseason on several occasions, and D Wade gets that edge. But that's not to throw shade on James Harden. It's to really say there's a level of appreciation for the greatness of D Wade that we don't give enough to because of MJ, because of Kobe, and to a lesser degree because LeBron was his teammate. But that brother D Wade was something spectacular. And